So, I am in a 2007 Mercury Mountaineer. It is like -5, somewhere in the below zeros outside right now. This hasn't been ran since yesterday. This thing has been through hell and back, and I gotta say, I think it's just a Ford thing. These things can just have about any single light on. You know, this thing's got about every single warning light. Well, not anymore. We got rid of most of them because it had some suspension issues. What most of them were, you know, ABS, you know, the brake light, the tire light, the traction control light was always on. So this thing has 176,000 miles on it, and that was definitely a rough start. It would help if that was off. Obviously, this thing is worn out. But to a lot of people, 176 is really high. To a lot of people, that's really low. To me, it's kind of high for a Minnesota vehicle. And this thing has spent most of its life in -5-degree weather. See, right now we've got tire light and check engine light, and then the door ajar is always on. The seatbelt light can be fixed if I were to put my seatbelt on, but I'm not driving. And then a check engine light, which Fords just about always have a check engine light. On this, most of it's caused by the exhaust leak, because it does have a pretty gnarly exhaust leak. It's having symptoms of a bad head gasket. It's got no heat. We don't have heat inside of it right now, so the defrost doesn't work. And then another issue it's having is it's been running okay. I put new plug wires and new plugs in it, and that helped it run better. The only reason it makes me think it's not a bad head gasket is because it's not eating through coolant or oil at all. It's not using oil and it's not using coolant. So I haven't had to add any coolant to it. Even if this thing was drinking coolant, look at this weather, it's not like I'll be using water in it. So I always use distilled water mixed with a concentrate, and I don't do the 50-50 because that will still freeze. I do about 60-40 more or less, so about 60% antifreeze, 40% distilled water, and that seems to be a decent mix for where I'm at. You know, and this thing has been overheated, so it hit 2 deer, and it was having a lot of radiator issues when we first got it up and running again, you know, because, you know, we didn't realize that the radiator, you know, if you can see, there's 2 little lines around the thermostat type thing right here. So in between those 2 black gashes is okay, I believe. You want to keep it in the middle or a little bit below, but, you know, if it goes a little bit above, it's okay. Sometimes it will if you're doing a lot of driving. But it was going way high, and it was overheating, obviously. And the tire light's only on because this doesn't have tire sensors in it. We just check it with a gauge. If you know how to do that, it's not a big deal. So yeah, this overheated a few times, which also is like, oh, maybe that's why it might have a bad head gasket. But I realized, but even then, this thing, when it was having all those issues, this thing, after the 2 deer, it had 135,000 miles on it. So we have put quite a bit of miles on this thing since hitting 2 deer. We butchered it together with another Mountaineer, our old O2, where the engine was bad, and there was a bunch of other issues. Oh, sorry, you're still zooming. There's a bunch of other issues with it. So we took it was the passenger side fender, the front bumper, and that's actually it. And then we had to put it's on its 3rd radiator because the second one got messed up too. It did it itself though, it cracked. So it's on its 3rd radiator, and so far it's doing okay. It doesn't overheat or anything. It's idling pretty high right now, and this is why I think it might. This is one of the head gasket symptoms. You guys can't really see. There you go. So quite a bit of white smoke. And yes, it had been running for a while before I gave it some not even 1,500 RPMs. So don't start yelling at me in the comments. You can hear the exhaust leak, which we actually did fix it a little bit. It was a lot worse before. and that made it run a hell of a lot better. See, here's where it idles at, which is a pretty healthy idle. It is shaking quite a bit right now. I think it might have like burnt through a valve, so I think it's only running. This engine's just worn out, you know, and 176,000 miles really isn't bad for an engine that's been overheated on multiple occasions, multiple times. This transmission also suffered from the overheating because it's linked to the radiator. So if your engine was overheating, chances are your transmission was getting hot too. Maybe not overheating, but it was probably getting hot. So this transmission's also gotten a lot of, you know, harsh use. Just about everything on this thing has just seen a lot of harsh use. But yeah, all it's on is the door light, because the hatch is also from our old 02 Mountaineer. So the sensors don't, or the latches line up, but we didn't plug the sensors back in because for some reason it was draining the battery when we did, so we just undid the sensors. And then tire light, yet again, there's just no tire sensors in it, which those aren't really necessary. And then the check engine light, just like every other Ford, it's partial the exhaust leak, and then the emission control valve that all of the Fords seem to have an issue with, and the airbag light, because, well, there's no airbags. I think there might be one airbag left in this thing, but yeah. But it still goes down the road, and it's still comfortable after everything it's been through. Even after hitting 2 deer, after we fixed it all up, we still drive this thing. The only reason it's not getting driven much in the winter is because who the hell wants to be driving with no heat? Because even if I turn the heat on, it blows ice cold air. So that could be a mixture of a bad head gasket and or just the I think the heater core is just bad, or maybe even a fuse. It could be multiple things. So I'm gonna have to look into it more. I was telling my dad that I feel like it might have a bad head gasket, and he says he thinks it's mostly due to the cold. You gotta think it's not getting driven often right now ever since the heat started acting up. So now this block is expanding and contracting a bunch randomly when we just start it here, because he has me start it so it can warm up before he moves it. And we have parallel parking where I live, so you have to move it, otherwise you get ticketed by the police. Let's see, window fogs up. Otherwise you get ticketed by the police. So yeah, we kind of have to do that. Otherwise it's like a $60 ticket every time you don't move your vehicle, because it's for the plows, obviously, if we get snow. So yeah, I'll have to do a engine view and exhaust view of this thing starting up, especially once I get the exhaust leak fixed. There's a few other things I need to do on this, but I don't really want to do them until I know for sure that there's not a bad head gasket leak. Finally the temperature's starting to go up. But yeah, you know, even if this thing were to die at, I kind of have this thing where I just want it to get to 200. I would love if this thing that's hit 2 deer, and it was ditched. We ditched it twice due to very, very icy roads. And it wasn't very significant ditching. It was, you know, it was just kind of, you lose control and you kind of almost purposely, no. You know, I wasn't the one driving, so I don't really know how it felt. All I know is it wasn't due to a bad driver. My dad's a good driver. The roads were glare ice, and it's one of those roads where you just don't see the ice coming, and it's just there. And even if you're going slow, which we were, it just kind of fucking happens. And yeah, it just, you know, spun out, and, you know, luckily this was a road where you had traffic coming this way, so it's kind of good thing that we went into a ditch. Matter of fact, I wasn't even there. I'm just going off of what he told me, how it went, but I wasn't even there. So it's actually a good thing. I would rather him veer into the ditch than veer into the incoming traffic. So yeah, and it was ditched once, not twice, once. And when that happened, it was basically unharmed. This one side pillar airbag went off. You know, there's sensors and everything. So, yeah. But I'm gonna end the video here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Peace.